Hello class. Looks like we are streaming, and sorry about that delay. Sometimes it's hard for me to tell exactly when it starts. But this is week number 2 in Drawing 1, and we've been talking about citing and measuring. So today and this week, this is going to be the only demo for this week. Unless people have questions and I need to do another demo, I'd be happy to do that. What we've started last week was citing and measuring. So what that is understanding how to measure an object or a series of objects from a distance to assess proportions relative to of one object relative to another, or proportions of one object relative to itself. So last week we did a single object. We looked at a wine bottle. We looked at its width, and we realized that its width was equal to about 4 times its height. So that was a 1-to-4 ratio. And knowing that the wine bottle had that type of ratio, we were able to make it any size on our paper and draw it accurately. So what we're looking at now today are 3 objects. And I'm going to put that picture in front of my face in just a minute so that it can be large enough for you to see. And I'm actually looking at those objects in this direction over here. So I'll be citing and measuring, and you can just reference the photo so you know what I'm looking at. So let me go ahead and find that photo here. All right, there it is. You may have already seen this on the iCollege page. So what I want you to do for this assignment is to find 3 objects from household objects from your kitchen, from anywhere in the house. And what you want to try to do is keep it simple. Notice on these objects I've picked things that can really be, well, really they're all cylinders. They're all kind of modified cylinders in this. You may think about the basic shapes, cylinder, sphere, and box, and you may try to get objects that are close to those 3 things. But on this one, we have really 3 modified cylinders. And even the table that I rested them on is an ellipse. So we're going to be looking at that. I'm not really going to be drawing that table. I'm really more concerned with drawing the objects in relation to themselves. So what I want you to do is, it might be a good idea for you to follow along with your bamboo skewer. So grab your bamboo skewer. If you didn't pick one of these up from school, then use a good size pencil like this. That should probably work just the same. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking some width measurements. When I start citing and measuring, the thing that I always try to look for first is a smaller measurement that can be used to fit into other measurements. So the first things I think about measuring, if you look at the picture, I'm going to move my cursor. I'm going to measure from here to here. I picked the widest point of this cylinder. So from here to here, I'm going to take that measurement and I'm going to see how it compares to other measurements. I want to see how many of those fit into the width of the can. I want to see how many of these measurements fits in the width of the drawing, the whole drawing itself. I'm sorry, the height of the whole drawing itself. So I could compare one of these measurements, turn it, and see how many times it fits into the overall height. I can also take this measurement. I can see how many times that measurement goes across this coffee carafe. I can also see how many times it goes up this way to the coffee carafe. At the beginning of a drawing, when I'm first starting to measure things, I look for something that is easy, that works well. So if I don't like the way that this measurement fits in, I might try this measurement, see how many times this measurement fits in going up this way. But this measurement probably won't help me with the width of this thing much. But those are the ways I usually get started. So if you don't have one of these pencils, go ahead and pause the video. If you're watching it live, you just have to keep watching. But if you are watching it after the fact, go ahead, grab either a pencil or grab your bamboo skewer. You might even want to get out a piece of paper so you can follow along. All right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this end of the stick and I'm going to line it up with this side of the pepper grinder. Then I'm going to move my thumb, keeping that right in place right here. I'm going to move my thumb along the stick until it lines up with that end. Okay? I'm doing that now. I'm closing one eye. I'm keeping my elbow completely extended because if I don't, I'm going to get a different measurement each time. Try to keep the same posture. So I've got that measurement, which came out to be this from where I'm sitting. So now I'm going to take this measurement and I'm going to turn it this way. And then I'm going to align it with the bottom of that crushed tomato can. And I'm going to see how many times the width of that pepper grinder fits into the overall height of the tomato can plus the grinder. All right, so I'm going to start down here at the bottom. And then what I do when I'm doing that, I just look for landmarks on the label and things to make me know, help me know how to move it up. So that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so it looks like it's right around 6. I'm going to try that a second time. I usually do it twice because I don't always trust my landmark placement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's about 6. Up to right about here was 6. So this little knob on the top will be extra. All right, so that's good. So I have that written down here, 1 to 6, and I have width of grinder written next to it. So now I'm going to look at. I'm also curious now that I've took my thumb off. I want to get that pepper grinder width again and then see how it relates to the coffee carafe. And I'm going to do the width of the coffee carafe from here over to here and see what I get. All right, that's 1, 2. Oh, it's a perfect 2. So the width of the grinder is 1 to 6 on that whole drawing and 1 to 2 on the coffee carafe. So this width of the grinder measurement is looking very promising. So the width of the can, if I'm going to now measure the width of the can, and I'm going to see how many times that fits in the whole drawing. Let's look at that. All right, the width of the can. Now I'm going to turn that measurement, and I'm going to bring it down to the bottom of the can and see how many times it fits in. 1, 2, 3. It's about 4. Let me take it one more time because I don't trust my measurements the first time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, it's really about 4. Okay, so the width of the can fits into that whole drawing about 4 times. And so I still think I'm going to use the width of that coffee grinder. The pepper grinder. Because that's really going to help me with that coffee pot. And I only measured from here to here. So 2 of this measurement fit from here to here. Now this width is going to be different. Let me try and see how wide the handle is. Well, that's just another one. So this measurement, this width, fits in twice here and once from here to here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and settle on using the width of the grinder as my really my basis of measurement for the whole drawing. So what I've done here is I've divided this. Remember how to get fourths, we took a measurement, we took from here to here and we divided it into half. And then we divided both of those halves into half again, and that got us fourths. So in order to get sixths, what we're going to do is we're going to divide from here to here into thirds. And I've done that already right here. So I'll show you that it is accurate by remeasuring it with my stick. So this is 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that's thirds right here. And then if I divide my thirds in half again, I'm going to get this smaller measurement, and that's going to fit 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got sixths here. So what do I know? What does that tell me? Well, what that tells me is this measurement is the width, equals the width of that pepper grinder. Okay? So I put this line in the center. Now I wish I hadn't, because the pepper grinder is not in the center of the drawing. It's actually over here. So what I'm going to do is, since we're okay with marks, I'm just gonna move it over a little bit, and I'm gonna redo it over here, and I'm just gonna keep that one over there because I can erase it eventually. And so I can get my sixths. Gosh, this thing is crooked. I can use my sixths like this. Alright, so here they are. There are the sixths, and here are the thirds. Alright, so we have the width of the pepper grinder is one of these. What about the width of that can? I can't remember now if I did, if it was 2 or not. I'm going to remind myself. Remeasure the width of the pepper grinder, do the width of the can. It's a little bit less than 2. So the width of the can is right about here. Because when I moved my stick twice, it came out further than the can, but there was just a little space. So I'm going to say it was right about here. So knowing that, and the can is on the bottom. It's the bottommost part of the drawing, so the can is going to line up with where I decided the bottom was going to be, which is right here. So let's take the measurement here that I said the width of the can equaled. And I want to center that on this because I want this line to be the center of the can. So what I'm going to try to do is get this right in the center so I can decide how wide the can is. Now, the problem with eyeballing is it looks like I put it too far that way. Let's see if that's true. A little bit. So I'm going to erase that and move it this way a little bit. Try it again. Okay, that's about right. So the width of the can is here. So I'm going to try to keep these lines parallel to the edge of my page and parallel to each other. This one is not so parallel with the bottom, so I'm going to straighten it. And I know that the top of the can is coming right about here. So my can is going to fit inside of here. But here's the question. Now, was I measuring to the back of that ellipse on top of the can, or just the front part? And I think I was just measuring the front part. So I'll have to know that it's actually going to be taller than that. 1, 2. Right. All right. So this is where the bottom of that ellipse is going to come up to. So if I wanted to know what the where's the back of the ellipse going to come up to, I'm going to have to redo it for that. 1, 2, a little bit less than 3 of those measurements. So this would be 1, 2, and 3. So it's going to be, the bottom of the ellipse is somewhere around here. So I'm sitting up. I don't know if it's the exact same as the photograph, but I'm sitting up. I'm really looking down on the bottom of that can. And so what that means is that I'm going to see a good bit of that ellipse. It's not a real narrow ellipse. Okay, so the bottom of the can, I'm exaggerating it a little bit. It's not so hard for me to draw with this board that way. Doing my best. There we go. It's something like that. Okay, there's the bottom of the can. The top of the ellipse, the bottom of that ellipse is coming here. The top of it is going to be up here. So I'm just going to start doing that ghosting. Okay. Alright, so I'm adjusting to get that ellipse. Now, this isn't really going to show because the pepper grinder, as you can see there, it's blocking it. But one thing that's really great to do with this stick is to take it and hold it along the side of the pepper grinder and see where it comes to right here. So I'm going to hold up my stick again to the side of the pepper grinder, and I'm going to see how it intersects this ellipse. And it's intersecting right about here. And it's a little bit off center on the top of that. So I can see more of the top of the can over here and less of it over here. And then I can see how much of it can I see here. I can see about that much of the can here. So that's where the bottom of that cylinder is. See, now you see why I told you it would be a good idea to practice cylinders. All right, so I've got where the bottom of that cylinder is on here, and now I need to remember how high up it goes. It goes up to about here, and then I think that the little button part is up here. So what else are we looking at here? So I'm going to redraw this in the center. We have a symmetrical object. Anytime you're drawing a symmetrical object, you want to make sure that you have a center line that's relatively straight. And I really discourage my students from using a ruler during this process, because I think it's really good practice to improve your skills by learning to eyeball it, using your stick to measure. I think I made it, it's a little off center. Pretty close. All right. So what I notice when I look at this pepper grinder is that it's straight down here. It has some engraved lines in it down here, and I'm not super worried about getting all of that exactly right at this point. you'll hear me say it all semester long. We're going from general to specific. Try not to get caught up in details at this point in time. What you want to do is you want to try to just get everything to look accurate. And the more I look at this ellipse, it's a little crooked. It's a little hard for me to draw on this side of the board because of the way it's leaning, but I can tell that there's a triangle that's created here, and it's not exactly the same on both sides. And I want to try to make it the same, so that might correct. Okay. All right, so I know it's going to come up to here. I know that there's it's kind of comes in and then it goes back out again at the top. All right, so right here, it's straight, then it goes in, and then it comes back out again. And I'm going to hold up my stick because I want to know, if I hold my stick right here along this line, does this come back out to the same line? I imagine it does, because the way woodworkers turn wood on a lathe. It does. So what I'm going to do to help myself with making that, I'm going to make this into a box, which I'll erase later. And that's going to help me judge how to narrow this the same way on both sides. Okay, I'm going to put my little widths across it. All right, so about how far up does that, I'm going to take my stick then, I'm going to measure from here to where that curve starts. Sure, I can eyeball it, but it starts, it's almost a third. So it's right about here. Since I drew those lines a little bit, I have kind of an idea, and then I know that I'm just going to try to eyeball this, where this is, this little cap on the top. And then you have the little button that comes up. Very hard to draw the detail with this. Then we have one of these coming up. And then another one that's a little bit below that one. And I can always fix this later if it's not right. So now I came in too far. And now I can just try to, what I'm doing when I'm looking at this angle is I'm trying to get them the same on both sides. So I can always do a line across this way where I feel like that curve starts, and so that way it'll make it even on both sides. So something like that. Doesn't feel even, though. I think it's because of that. I think this one is a little too harsh. Alright, so it's starting to look more like that pepper grinder and not just a generic pepper grinder. I feel like the ratios look pretty good. And now we're on to the coffee pot. Remember, we're going general to specific. So I'm not putting any detail here. What I'm really concerned about is proportions. I put these little lines. They're kind of detailed, but they're also structural. So now what I want to do is I want to see where that coffee pot is. From where I'm standing or sitting, there's a little bit less of a negative space. So whenever I'm drawing something that's right next to something else, I want to look at the negative space. That negative space is right here. What's that distance right there? Can you just eyeball it? I want to take my stick. I want to drop an angle from here to here so I can see what that measurement is, what that angle is. I want to take an angle from here and drop it down to here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take angles by holding my stick perpendicular to the ground and assess an angle by moving either like you're the hand of clock, either going clockwise or counterclockwise until you line things up. So the first one I'm going to do is from here to here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my stick straight up and down, and then I'm going to move the top of my stick counterclockwise until it hits just here and here. And then I'm going to take that angle and I'm going to transfer it to my paper. All right, let me get this. Okay, so I'm going to take it. I'm turning my stick counterclockwise, lining it up. No, that's not quite right. I've got cables in my way. Actually, I'm going to do it to the edge. Instead of to out here, I'm going to do it to the edge of this thing because I really want to draw this thing as one cylindrical shape, and then I'm going to add the handle on later. So I'm going to drop that angle. Angles can be tricky to hold and to transfer. So you see I just messed it up. But I'm going to do it a couple of times. I'm not worried about making marks on my paper because that's what this kind of drawing is about. It's about freeing yourself up. Now, I feel pretty good about that. All right, now the height. So I have that angle. I also want to have this angle down here. I forgot about that. Let me do that real quick. Something like that. You can always measure twice if you're uncertain. All right, now that's just kind of telling me where things line up. Now what I also want to do is take my stick and I'm going to hold my stick parallel to the ground and see where it intersects the can here and where it intersects the pepper grinder there. So these kind of things. So I'm going to hold up my stick to the bottom of the coffee carafe and see where that comes up to on my can. Somewhere between a fourth and a third, maybe right here. Just going to do that. And then the top. Now from the top, I'm going to go to, this is an ellipse, right? The top of this. It's a different plane than this. I'm going to actually see where it comes to at the top of this plane, and then I'm going to measure to the back of the ellipse. The back of the ellipse will be here somewhere, and the bottom will be where those lines are somewhere. It's up here somewhere. And I know that there's very little negative space here where this grinder comes into play. So now we need to think about that's height. Now we wanted to talk about width. We know that the width of the pot was the grinder, this measurement here, times 2. And I'm going to double check that. I have it written down, but I just want to make sure that was the case before I commit myself to it. Yeah, pretty much true. So 1, 2 should be this much. So if my pot comes up to about here, it's going to end right about here. Remember, this is excluding that handle. All right, so that means the bottom of the coffee pot's right about here, close to where I said it was going to be. Then we start kind of getting we want a center line when we're drawing something that's symmetrical, and I want to indicate the bottom of that ellipse is right about here. If I have it coming in a little bit, I don't think it goes quite that narrow. Something like that. It has another ellipse in here with this half. Now we also said that the handle was the width of a pepper grinder. So I'm going to make that right here, and I can draw this line, and I know that that's where that handle ends. It starts, kind of has this plastic thing that goes along the outside, and it ends right about here. It goes up a little bit, not that much, maybe that much, and then it angles in to about here. There's another plane on this. I want to try to make this a little bit more clear. There's another plane that comes down with it, and then connects there, and then that comes across this way. All right. See, your cubes, believe it or not, your cubes are going to come in handy when understanding how to draw this handle, because these are essentially, you've got kind of a rounded thing, but it's also, it's cubed. This is a plane. This is a plane. All right, so that looks pretty good. My pot, I think, is a little bit skinny, and I think it might be because I'm looking back and forth to the picture versus the real object, which is a little bit closer that way. And then, of course, this is an ellipse here, so that's the inside of the pot. And you've got your little hash marks here. All right, so this is an example of how, you notice I spent a good deal of time assessing measurements and proportions And then the drawing, it just made the drawing part so much easier, and I didn't have to fret too much over the drawing, because when I started, once I made my marks, I began to understand where you know, where things start and end. And so once you get to this point in your drawing and you check back, you double check it. I don't have, any real details in here, just your basic shapes. Then what I recommend you do at this point, when you're feeling like you're happy with it, is to get away from the drawing. So look at it from afar. So when I do that, I just have to look up at my computer and I see that this is off. It's up higher than this one, right? Ellipses are supposed to be symmetrical. So I could take a horizontal line this way and say, okay, that's where it should end. And let me redraw it. And that already looks a little bit better. Again, I'm having a real hard time drawing ellipses with my hand like this, but it's hitting my body. So when you get to this point, what I want you to do, since this is all erasable, right? I mean, to a certain extent. What you're going to do at this point, when you're happy with it, you've put your drawing across the room, you've fixed anything that you're not happy with, and you can even, like, there's a little steel band right here that connects down here at the bottom, and then you can see it on the back side. It's just the continuation of the ellipse on the other side. Little things like that you can put in, but you want to take your pencil and you want to go ahead then and try to put down a line with this, because this line is more permanent and it won't erase as easily as this vine charcoal. If you put it aside, you put it in a stack of drawings with just using that vine charcoal, then you might lose it altogether. So this is the point in the drawing where some people take their hand and just erase all this vine charcoal, and it leaves kind of a ghosty area. Then you can use that ghosty area. That sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just get this charcoal down first, and then I can erase some of that other stuff. That ellipses right around in here. Then this thing that was so hard to draw, this middle thing, I'm going to just draw it in now. Something like that. It's a little bit too big. And for the purposes of this assignment, you don't need to draw in all the labels and stuff unless you just really want to. You are more than welcome to, but remember, we're not doing value at this point. All we're doing is we're trying to learn how to get accurate proportions in line drawing. Going from general to specific. We're leaving it pretty general. We're working on our basic shapes. So when you go to choose your objects, choose wisely. Don't get something that's too complicated unless you're super comfortable with it. Now, see, I should have done this with the fine charcoal first. You don't even have to draw all this stuff. I'm just kind of doing it for the heck of it. All right, and so there you have it. If you wanted to draw the bottom of the table, it's not going to be possible for me to do it here because it's just too awkward. So that's it. That's the three. This is really all I expect you to do. You probably do want to clean it up before you turn it in. So just get that nice outline with the charcoal pencil, the one that's not going to erase easily. And then erase as best as you can your pentimenti. If you watched the video, you've heard that these little ghosty marks that we leave are called pentimenti. So we'll try to erase them. They're still going to be there. They're actually quite beautiful. And talk about the artist's process. They're kind of nice to look at. So get it good and cleaned up before you turn it in. I'm not going to make you watch me do that. But I'll just trust that you're going to turn in a drawing that looks as clean as you can make it. And that's it. So this is the three object still life. And so we're going to do 2 of these this week. I want you to choose your own still life objects and do one that has 3 objects and do one that has 4 objects. And what I'm going to recommend that you do is try to make some of the objects, choose some tall objects, stack some objects so that you have some kind of interesting thing going on. If you choose 3 objects that are the same height, it really makes for a boring composition. And we haven't talked a lot about composition yet in this class, but you're probably going to want to try to choose something that's tall on one side and shorter, and things that are have a variation of heights and starting places and things like that. Okay, well, this is it. If you have any questions, email me. And again, this is an 18 by 24 sheet of newsprint. If you don't have newsprint, you can use your drawing paper. You want to try to have the drawing take up as much space as it can on the paper. Drawing big is actually a little bit easier, and you want to get used to it because in your portfolio, they're going to expect you to have 18 by 24 drawings with that are just full and going off the edge. We're not to the point where we're going off the edge yet, but when we get to Still Life, Module 3, you're going to fill up your page and objects are going to be flowing off the edges of your page. You're just going to be doing a snapshot of a larger still life.